Hi, everyone. Welcome to Laughter on Call's monthly webinar for Halloween this month. How exciting. Thank you all for showing up. I'm sure you're as interested as I am in eco burial. And I'm particularly excited about this guest because we were actually on a lineup together in New Jersey, an all-day seminar for New Jersey aging care, aging life care. I got to do a fact check on that. Um, and I was hired to make people laugh. So that's great. And little did I know that it would be an entire day of death. Yes, they had all kinds of death seminars all day. And then the last one, doulas and end of life planning and all those things. And then came Elizabeth, and I thought, oh, wow, this is going to, because Elizabeth talks about actual burial, as you will learn. And I thought, oh no, how am I going to follow this? Except she is so knowledgeable and so funny, has a sense of humor that it was a delightful experience and really informative. And that's why I wanted to bring her to us today. So, welcome, Elizabeth. For anyone not familiar with Laughter on Call, we are passionate about creating connection through shared laughter. That's our mission. We launched in the healthcare space, helping people facing Alzheimer's. And when I say people, I do mean my mother initially. And now we work with caregivers and families and lots of team leaders to create connection, boost morale, and learn communication skills that help. So that's the backstory on us. Let's get going with Elizabeth. So I'm going to tell you all about her first. Elizabeth Fournier began her career in 1990 in Portland, Oregon, where she was employed as the live-in night keeper, sleeping in a trailer in a Portland cemetery. Yes. 35 years later, she is a one-woman funeral service in the rural town of Boring, Oregon. Yes, Boring, Oregon. That is apparently not boring, and I believe that. Elizabeth owns and operates Cornerstone Elizabeth owns and operates Cornerstone Funeral Services, where she is affectionately known as the Green Reaper for her green burial advocacy. She's the author of the Green Burial Guidebook, everything you need to plan an affordable, environmentally friendly burial. Elizabeth gave a TEDx talk called Going Green, the Last Act of Environmental Volunteerism. And People magazine honored her work by writing, Elizabeth Fournier is doing her part to change the way Americans bury their dead. So, welcome, Elizabeth Fournier. And I know it's two syllables, Fournier. It's very French,
Right.
yes?
Not like Chevrolet, it's Fournier. My father had Alzheimer's, and if I only knew I could have hired a comedian, my goodness, that would have been completely day and night. Yes.
Awesome, awesome. So delighted to have you, as I said.
Thank
So I
you.
think we should just kick this off and tell us a little bit how you ended up with this passion for, shall we say, dead people.
Well, I actually, you're making me laugh. I don't have a lot of laughs here in the funeral home, so thank you for that, where it's a very serious, serious job. Um, as a young kid, I had that household where everybody passed away. My parents were elderly, not well. Mother died. My dad's parents lived with us. They died. And I was part of a little Catholic community where the priest was always coming over and saying prayers. And we were always having mass and naming them and hospital visits, and pretty soon funerals and burials and rosaries. So I was that weird sort of kooky kid. And I always knew that somehow the death arts was my thing, and I didn't quite know what that looked like as a kid. You don't know. You play in the sandbox, you line up the Barbies and the Hot Wheels, and you play funeral procession, or kind of wear the black dresses around the neighborhood and see what people think about it. So as time went on, I knew pretty early on being an undertaker was what I was going to do. Went to college, and when I was in college, my job was a live-in night keeper at a huge cemetery in Portland, Oregon, and that was what it is. And here I am 35 years later.
That's wild. First of all, I have not heard before the death arts. I'm hooked. The death arts. That's fantastic. And you know what's so interesting about it is how conversant you are with this whole stage of life or death, if you will, and the use of the word dead. Like people don't really like that word. It's very intimidating. So, or
Yeah.
frightening or final. And it's so that again, what I loved about hearing you speak was that there's a certain amount of levity around this as like a natural part of life. So, anything you want to say about that?
It's so hard to lose people in our lives. And often we tell kids, oh, daddy went night night, or grandpa's in heaven, or somebody passed away. Dead is a hard word because dead is so solid. It's really that punctuation point, and there's nothing else you can possibly maneuver around it. It's been taken quite a while in my journey to be able to say that word too. Um, what I like to say often is they've gone off onto a much better place. I say my father's in his cruise ship in the sky. I really believe people who aren't here, they're the lucky ones. They're better off. They're doing something much more amazing than standing in line at the post office and paying taxes and all of those things. So, yeah, dead's a funky word, isn't it? But I guess that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, already you're talking about, I know that's in your book as well, about like the spiritual element of your work as well, which I do want to get to, but I think we have to get like the obvious out of the way. What is an eco burial? Please tell us.
Great question. So, when people say eco friendly burial or green burial or natural burial, it's all synonymous. It's that idea of your body going back to nature. And that could be in many forms. That can be in just you using a simple biodegradable casket, not being embalmed, being laid into the earth. There's many cemeteries. Matter of fact, every state has a cemetery, and several of them where they allow a burial where you don't have to have anything more fancy than a pine box, a sheet from your bed, what have you. People also in 40 states are buried in their yards. It's just, again, something that is more common. We also have all these things like water burial, where rather than having the flame of the cremation, we're doing it with water. There's 29 states that do that. We can be buried at sea. We can be composted. So there's so many things out there. And I'm always happy to talk to people because people don't realize you have more choices than just being buried or just being cremated.
Wow, there is so much to unpack there, truly. But I wonder if we could, in terms of this passion of yours, if you've experienced that this is actually like the experience of grief for families that do this versus conventional burial, because you've experienced both as a funeral director. You have done traditional burial and this kind of burial, and I'm wondering what the experience is for families.
So the first 15 years of my funeral career was always working either for the Catholic Church or working for a corporation. And there was a very set way on how we did things. We would say, here's the price list, here's the services, this is what we do, and this is what's sort of expected. When I came out here to Boring, Oregon, this was a repurposed goat barn in the country. And I was ready to kind of get on my own, do something different, maybe I don't know, not be so micromanaged and be able to give families more choices. And within a week of being here, I got a phone call from a family that said, Wanda just died. We live in an intentional community in teepees. We want to bury her here in our land. How do we do this? Can you help us? And that was fascinating because I thought, ooh, that's an answered prayer. All of a sudden, I'm faced with what I asked for was just some situation that I don't know how to handle. And I let them know that I'm not sure, but let's work together to make this happen. And would you know it? It was simple, it was easy, and we were able to do it. And from there, the door opened wide for me to realize, wow, this is legal, this is ethical. I can give families whatever they want, whatever the heck it is they want.
Wow. Okay. And so you mentioned you can bury people, I think you said in 49 states. How many states?
It's about 40-ish. There's about
40.
four other states that have really, really tight rules, but many states you can. But I tell people check in with your jurisdiction, your planning and zoning, your county, your, township. We don't do this willy-nilly. We just don't put everybody in the backyard. I happen to be in a rural part of my state in Oregon where we can do this. And many people say, great, this sounds good. So when Wanda and those on the community wanted to do this, we met at a bar and we were filling out paperwork. And we had to go through the vital statistics, which was putting a death certificate together. And when I came to what does she do for a living, they said, oh, she's just sort of a wanderer. And then I thought, well, I guess I can put that for occupation. And then we talked about industry. And I said, well, what type of industry do you think she wanders for? Because these are, county generated documents we need to do. And they said, well, just put the earth. So Wanda, the wanderer of the earth. Well, county actually went with that. I was surprised, but it really again showed me that whatever the family wants to tell me somebody did for their life, they wanted her to be buried and wrapped in a shroud. We wanted to prepare the hole in the with the sons digging it. I mean, and we wanted to have fish from the river down the street. And as long as we had a death certificate that said private land and had the address, and I sort of observed it all and made it happen, it was a lovely, amazing, game-changing day. And that was my Oprah aha moment of wow, maybe I'm in the funeral arts, whatever you want to call it, because maybe my life plan here is to open people's eyes and say, did you know you can use a cardboard casket? Did you know you can build your own? You can transport your own person? All these things that the families I work with didn't know they could do, I could gently offer to them and see if it was the correct choice for them.
Wow. And have you ever had a more urban request, or is it pretty much rural?
Yeah, I mean, we take care of people all over. Portland's a pretty metropolitan area. And if you've watched any of the news lately, you realize Portland, the motto here is keep people weird. I'm 20 miles outside of Portland, but I take care of people all over the place. And of course, people sometimes want the Star Trek casket or they want to be. Get people who say, "Can't you just put me up in the hill and have the turkey vultures get me?" Or the one I hear a lot here out in the woods because I'm pretty close to Mount Hood, which is a beautiful, gorgeous mountain. Well, when the time comes, I'm going to dig a space. I'm going to walk out there and I'm just going to collapse and I'm going to have my burial there under the embodiment of Mount Hood. And, I have to talk to families about this stuff. And a lot of times they say, I love your idea. I love your vision. However, because again, I hold a license and I've had education in this, I have to let people know let's look at it this way, or maybe this wouldn't be a good idea because of X, Y, and Z. And unfortunately, to squash the Mount Hood burial, which I love, someone's going to find you. The medical examiner is going to get involved. They're going to bring you back to the medical examiner's office. There's probably going to be an autopsy, and you're not really getting that beautiful mountain burial that you wanted. So let's go about everything the legal way with the correct channels and try to get you as close to what you want.
Amazing. And what prompted you to write a book about this? Were you getting requests and demand from around the country or the world, and you felt like, you know what, I need to share this information?
Well, as you're probably finding too, Danny, in life, it's organic how things happen. You sometimes you can say, I'm going to be an accountant and I'm going to go to school and I'm going to do this. Other times, the doors just open because it's either where you need to be or because life happens. And after that first family called, I was starting to get phone calls from people saying, hey, are you that girl who buries people in their yards? And of course, that was nerve wracking to me because part of me was really excited about it, but the other half thought, "Oh my gosh, I don't want the authorities to think I'm doing something crazy out here." So I started really reading up and researching and figuring out everything we could do and everything we couldn't do. And then other funeral homes would call and say, we've got this request, and I know this is something you did. So after providing information to people and writing different articles and putting things on my website, finally a publisher came along and said, would you be willing to maybe write a guidebook or some sort of a handbook or something? And I thought, oh my gosh, yes, this is amazing. So there came the book and putting it together and putting in, how somebody can make a shroud and what the dimensions are. And if you're going to dig a space, what type of shovel and how far do you do it, and just all of the everything from the anthropology of it to the stories to why it's environmental. But families need to make the choice of what works for them, because as a licensed mortician I do whatever people want, and if they want the diesel hearse or they want the huge headstone, I'm here to provide families what they want because, again, those are the ethics that come into this job. It's not about me, even though this is something I love and I advocate for. It's about whatever you want because death is hard. It is so hard to lose somebody. And on
Mm.
the West Coast, we're 80% direct cremation. That's just how it is. That's just what we do out here.
Wow.
Mhm.
Well, I'll tell you, my mother died 5 years ago, and she's buried in Queens with her family. But there was a day or two where I thought there was no plot for her out there, and I started shopping for plots here, and like it's big business. It was I was quoted 40,000 at one point. Like it's big business a burial plot in Los
Oh,
Angeles.
that's painful. Their funeral homes and cemeteries can choose whatever price structure they want, and some are extraordinary. So I always encourage people shop around, make phone calls. You don't have to go to the local place right in your community. It's not like a school district where you have to kind of
Right.
do what's close by. You can do whatever you want. And what I loved about the pandemic is people started reading and watching YouTube videos, and people started
Mm.
letting me know that, did you know I can do this? And I want to do this. And wonderful. People don't know to ask these questions.
Yes, the pandemic was very good for death. It was a killer time. Thank you,
Well,
folks.
good that people actually spent time
Ha!
too reading and learning too, and
Yeah,
realizing as well that, people started just watching all these videos and getting educated. So that
yeah.
was, yeah. So there was some really quality, great things that came out. That my favorite part, I think, was the people in Italy, the opera singers who showed up on the verandas and just sang and belted out, or the people in New York who got their cello on the fire escape. I just, wow, I live in the country, so that blows me away. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, that was totally cool. It was totally fun for us too because we started live streaming comedy, like interactive comedy with isolated seniors, and then everybody else showed up too because, there's nothing like laughing. But you mentioned environment, the environmental advantages of this type of burial, and I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit for us.
Sure. So when a lot of people think about a traditional cemetery, you think about all the green, sparkly grass. And to get it that way, that's a lot of chemicals, that's a lot of mowing, that's a lot of stuff that goes on. Then below the grass, there's even more going on. There's lots of steel and hardwoods and lots of toxic glues, metals, all of those things. And just from education over time, we're learning that the amount of metal and hardwood and steel and things that people put into the ground is enough to rebuild one Golden Gate Bridge annually. That's pretty darn big. That's a huge span in San Francisco. So, if we can actually use those resources for the living, that'd be pretty cool. Are
Mm.
there ways that we can honor our deceased and not have to cut down trees or use steel? Sure, there's plenty of ways to do that. And people even think about occasionally, well, my family always chose a blue casket. We always went to the cemetery, but maybe we can use recycled paper for memorial folders, or we can carpool, or we can use plants that are succulents so the family can actually, rather than cut flowers, they can take the succulents home and continue to use them. So just little shades of green, green footprints, ultimately not putting a lot of chemicals and things into the earth and really being able to give back. And that idea of your beautiful body, our bodies are full of so much juicy, rich goodness. And if we can just be buried naturally into the ground, we give back so much to the biosphere and the permaculture. And man, those flowers and those meadows will be sparkling and gorgeous just from us, our own personal fertilization.
Okay, that's what like it's so Halloween. And you envision all these juicy bodies being seeped into the earth and then their spirits floating around. Oh, I love it. I love it. And yeah, I remember you saying the juicy part during your speech, and it was really like, I
I
don't
could
think,
probably use a different word. I probably could use, we just have so much stuff inside us that is so healthy for the planet and for flowers and shrubs. And consequently, as a mortician, I don't like Halloween. Just throwing that out there.
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think you should change the word from juicy because it's memorable and no one else is saying it. So, yes, and to juicy bodies in the earth. And wait, you don't like Halloween?
When I was younger, a younger woman, I thought Halloween was so great because people were so creative and so fun, and there was these great costumes. But maybe it's just because I'm in the funeral, burial, end of life world, but all I see on Instagram is gore and spooky and blood. And I think, oh, bring back the bumblebees or the cute things. It doesn't need to be all about death and macabre. And, I guess I'm a sensitive gal. That turns me off. I think death is, again, so hard. Halloween is just so in your face to so many people who've just lost somebody. And some of it I think is a little bit, could be tampered down a little bit. So,
Oh, that's such an interesting perspective that you're in the death biz and you're like, you know what? We don't need all that. That's
yeah.
very
I like Father's Day. I like Mother's Day. I like those beautiful days where we give to people who have given to us. That's good.
nice, nice. All right, I have to ask because again, the wording human composting. Ah,
Hmm.
how does one achieve this?
So that's a great question. So there's a lot of buzzwords in the funeral industry, right? We say human composting is one of them. What I tend to say when I talk to families is it's called natural organic reduction. And it's that idea that you will be in some sort of a vessel, either inside or outside, meaning inside a building or inside maybe a cemetery, your own little vessel. You're placed there nude. You're going to have some wood chips and some flora and some just fungi and some spores and protozoa and just some natural wood chips, whatever. I guess I just said that. And then you're going to ultimately break down to compost. And that's going to be because of the heat and the oxygen and everything going inside that vessel. Some people, like gardeners, say, yes, I have a compost pile. I love my garden. This sounds great. The idea of going and getting grandma and getting those gallon drums and bringing her back to plant around a tree or plant a
Okay,
flower garden or something.
wait,
Hmm.
are we chopping grandma up to put her in the
Laying, there's a full body, laying naturally, and everything breaks down that way. And you become soil. And afterwards, you can put your hands in it. It's aromatic, there's no DNA. And you can either donate it to a forest, you can do what you want to do. So, yeah, I guess a human composting is what we say, but I think, again, that just seems a little bit harsh of a, again, sensitive gal. I like to say it as just natural reduction, and you are becoming part of the earth that way. When we talk about full body burial at sea, people say, oh my gosh, I can't. The idea of somebody floating around the ocean, but no, there's more steps we take to this. We make sure someone goes to the bottom of the ocean floor gently. And if somebody loves the idea of deep sea diving, swimming with fish, this might be a lovely way for them to give themselves back or to spend their physical eternity. There's just so many options because not everything is for everybody. And I don't think the idea of me being 3 nautical miles off the ocean and going down to the ocean floor, no, not for me, but could be for someone else.
And so you're advocating this more than ashes, because some people want their ashes thrown in the ocean, but you think this
Yeah,
is
so you can get ashes the two different ways. You can do the high heat of the flame, what we think about as a standard cremation. What we're finding out is a lot of that is, not the most eco-friendly. You're going to be 1800 degrees for about 3 hours. So there's a lot of fossil fuel that goes into that. Everything inside of you, the clothing, toxins, whatever is going to go basically up to the universe. And then when the rain comes, the wind comes, that's going to trickle down to the crops, the fields, the fish are going to be eating that, the chicken are going to be eating that. Ultimately, it's just a clone of your body in the sky. So that's something to think about. And also, ashes aren't really biodegradable. They are high in calcium. If you're going to put them in your garden or on your favorite rose bush, it's really probably going to leach most of the ingredients and the nutrition and the soil out of there, and it's not really going to do what you want. So people say, oh, I want to have my ashes and I want to put them and bury an apple tree and I want to have this wonderful apple tree. I encourage people to maybe really rake them into the soil or really consider mixing them with some apple cider vinegar and neutralizing them, because you don't want to have the death of your mom and then have the death of this wonderful apple tree that you put out there in honor of your mom. So
yeah,
scattering
that would be
ashes at sea, in a river, running water would be definitely the best choice if you weren't going to keep them contained inside a vessel somewhere.
Wow. And now in terms of this vessel burial, say I want to do this.
Mm.
How do where do I find a vessel and is it expensive? It seems like, I don't know. Tell me, how would I do it?
Okay, so there's 12 states right now which are up and running for natural organic reduction. And then it would be up to you probably to talk to your local funeral parlor and say, does this state have it? Where do I go? Can you transport me? And they will make it happen. And then from there, you have the right to choose what you want to do with the soil. We happen to be, am in the Portland area. There is a forest, which is about an hour and a half from me, and they have a natural burial cemetery, and they have these vessels in the cemetery. And a lot of people find that attractive because you can choose a tree which is indigenous to the area, and you can have your compost there left in the forest, or you can come take it home. So it's almost like renting a burial spot. It's rather than, if you're buried in a grave, buried in a mausoleum, that's yours for eternity. This is something that you're renting out for a shorter period of time, 4 months, 6 months, and off you go. When you're being cremated, you're using that machine for about 4 hours. And so I guess you're technically renting it, but again, it's something that other people are using as well, where this cradle will just be yours until you're out of that cradle once you are actually composted or reduced naturally and organically.
Wow. And how long does that usually take for a body to be?
Well, that's an interesting question because we talk about nature. Now, if you're going to be outside, then you are fully contained. There is a thermometer, the cradle rotates back and forth. There's the elements of nature. Probably maybe 6 months. If you're going to be inside, because there's a lot of places, for instance, we are about 3 hours from Seattle, Washington. There are three of these facilities in Seattle, and they're inside sort of industrial warehouses. They can truly control the temperature, all of the things. It's a little bit more mechanical that way. And I think they say it can be 4 months maybe or so, and then you can go from there.
So the cradle that you're describing, that's not an enclosed sphere or whatever tube. It's actually open at the top like a cradle.
Yeah, so the cradle would be open at the top, but then once you're placed into it and the funeral director has made sure it's you, there's a bunch of steps with identification, and we have the top layer of all of the soil on top, and we have the thermometer in place. It does get closed and it does get locked. So you are enclosed in your own little vessel cradle area. Some of these, Colorado has these where they're outside an area. Some places have them where they look a little bit more like a walk-in or maybe uh, like you go into somebody's garage and there's a freezer in the garage. Some of them look a little bit more like that. So it is whatever. I just tell people to make some phone calls, check around, ask to take a tour of facilities. Just make sure whatever you're making the choice for, the price point is right for you, the process, the people, all of that. I mean, that's again, education.
Yeah, everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in because Elizabeth will be happy to answer them, I'm sure.
Great. Yeah.
Well, I'm just kind of taking all of this in and wondering, because you've been in the business 35 years, so
Mhm.
what's like what's the most challenging burial, I would say, or what's the quirkiest, I guess it's the same question, the quirkiest, the most unusual burial you've had to do?
Yeah, so probably the most challenging burial would be when, I mean, there's just that is such a broad scope. Sometimes it's families who want to do something and the weather is horrid and people flew in and people are ready to spend time in the cemetery and people can't drive up to the cemetery because of the ice or the snow, or we can't dig because the tundra is too solid. So canceling burials on families is really, that's up there with painful. That's really hard. Also, when we do something a little bit more natural in people's yards, I often say, well, let me come and let me take a little walk around because I want to make sure the ground is okay for digging. Sometimes you get a real rocky outcropping or something where the soil is really hard clay. And even though that is a spot where grandma sat in her chair by the lavender bushes and that's the spot you want to have the burial, you're really going to have a hard time excavating that ground. And I don't want people to have that heartache either. So that's a hard one too. Those things happen. We have a lot of people who get very, very heavy, very obese, handles break off caskets. People sometimes have unrealistic expectations about things. So all of that, of course, is the trickiest and the hardest. Now, the quirkiest, one that I really enjoyed is when a naturopath that was about, oh, maybe up in the hills from where I am. And he planned out, he knew when the day was coming. We have assisted suicide here in Oregon, as well as a lot of states. And he was going to just check out when the time was right for him. And he put everything in place. He had me come out. He had me look at the space. He said, "This is where I take my bath." He had a bathtub overlooking a cliff. He said, "I want to be right here. This is what I want." He had the wildflowers all ready for people to sprinkle. He had tents. He wanted to have like a big party afterwards. And then he had an ecopod, which was going to be a paper mache sort of sarcophagus, and it was all made out like the Yellow Submarine, and he had his name on it. And his idea was, bury me by the edge of this river, and then when the big one comes and the earthquake and everything shakes, I'm going to cascade down the hill and I'm going to fly down that river, and I'm going to be in my Yellow Submarine. So of course at the burial we played Yellow Submarine and some other Beatles songs, and it was just great because everybody knew this was coming. The death wasn't shocking. People from the community got to be together and do this. He planned out the day when this was going to happen. The weather was fine. So that was quirky and neat to have face painting and have all these other things that you don't technically see. It was more like a Renaissance fair, if you will. So that was quirky and neat. And people often think that, well, when I plan my funeral out, I'm going to pick the color of my casket and I'm going to pick my song or two and I'm going to pick the cemetery and that's that. You can pick more. You can pick about when you're, having your final days. What songs do you want to hear? Do you want people to take photos? Everything from just, my cousin says, everybody wears black or you're not coming in. And she's made that very clear. You're wearing black, you're not coming in. And so, okay, we've all heard that. So I think we all know at this point, if we're going to Suzanne's funeral, we're all wearing black or we're not coming in. So, everything from food to art to music. You can really plan a lot of things. People pick out their outfits a lot, what they want to wear. You got to make sure you still fit into it. All of those things that sometimes are heartbreaking for people when the plans were made and they're not necessarily going to work.
Wow, that I didn't know that there was a whole life of figuring out your death, orchestrating your death.
Yeah.
Um, so in terms of the backyard, not to go on and on about this, but the backyard burial, because I just find this I have a couple of questions about that. Number one, how far down do you have to dig to put the body? And then what do you do when you sell the house? If you sell the
Mhm.
house, do you have to disclose that there's, a body back there?
Super good questions. So we really only need to go down into the soil 3 feet, 4 feet. You want to get to where all of the biosphere and the funky funk of the nature party is going on. If you bury somebody 10 feet down, for them to biodegrade is going to take quite a while. And the point is to be able to, again, have them join what's going on and become part of whatever it is you want to do. I also have people who say, "Oh, we're not looking to be green or eco-friendly. We're looking to save money. Why should I buy a space down the street if I can do this in my yard?" Absolutely. You really, again, only need to go 3 to 4 feet down. Some people go much, much further. It's a lot of work. Digging a grave is a lot of work. And I've often told people, two of you, and if you get down too low, bring a shovel. You got it, or not a shovel, a ladder. You got to get back up. And really, just 3 to 4 is fine. People worry about the animals coming. Now, animals are opportunists. We're just not that tasty. I don't think they're that interested in us. It's just not. They're going to find a rabbit in the bush or something. So that is where we need to go as far as the depth. Now, as far as disclosing, yes, 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 yes. When I work with families, or I'm just sort of in the periphery of families, I do let them know this is the phone number that needs to be called. You need to run your address by them just to make sure that everything is satisfied. And some of the things need to be satisfied. It kind of varies, but normally you need to have about 1 acre. You need to own the place outright, not you own the bank, you still give money or there's a mortgage. It truly belongs to you. you've given permission, all of those things. You can have multiple people buried on your yard. You can't charge, you can't have a cemetery because that's why we have cemeteries. But if you decide you're going to have your own thing, great. Disclose it, yes. And I tell people draw a map. Go out to the yard, draw where the bushes or the fence or the rocks or whatever. The landscape of the backyard might very well change. The people who know where the burial is might die. I mean, you need to just make it really clear this is where Mima or Peepaw are, and this is the little indication. And yeah, you do need to disclose when the house sells because they deserve the right to know that there is somebody full body buried in the backyard. If you scatter ashes or bury an urn, nope, don't have to have a permit. You can do whatever the heck you want there. But a full body, yeah, I think it's the right thing to do, and it's also the legal thing to do.
Amazing. So I can hear from all of your answers that this has really affected you personally, like even your disdain for Halloween as a result of being in this, really caring so much. And because you talked about, people being so specific, do you have specific ideas for yourself? Has it inspired you?
Well, I don't think I want that burial at sea. That just doesn't resonate with me. Um, I'm married. We have an 18-year-old daughter. I think ultimately Sophia would be the person making the choices, and I need her to make the choice that's most comfortable for her. We had a green burial for my father at a Catholic cemetery because most Catholics, Muslims, Jewish, there's a lot of faiths that love the idea of natural burial, and there's a space waiting for me there. When my father, my mother died when I was very little, he bought three spaces, and he actually said to me, I would like you to be next to me. My brother's cool with that, even though he wasn't the chosen kid to be buried next to them. He's fine. So there, she has a choice of putting me there, or where I am actually is private land. We could do that too. I really want her to be the most comfortable because ultimately she's going to be the one left behind. She's the one who's not going to have her fabulous mom. So she needs to feel the most solid and centered and grounded with the choice that's made. And that's fine.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that. That's very generous of you, actually,
Oh, thank
because
you.
I talk about this a lot in like Alzheimer's care that you need to do to feel good about you need to show up for whoever, a parent, a loved one, anybody that you care about in cognitive decline, yes, for them, 100% for them, but also for you because they're going to pass and you are still here. So, what are you doing to create peace for yourself after the fact? So, I think that's really cool that you're cognizant of that for your daughter.
Thank you. And if you have plans, like you say, I want to be cremated, I want my ashes scattered at a specific place, maybe put money aside for that person because I do have a family I dealt with not that long ago who still feels this pain of mom wants to be in Italy and we can't afford to go to Italy and I still have mom's ashes and they feel so horrible about it. So mom, did she do a service by saying this is what I want, or did she create a burden by saying this is what I want? So
Yeah.
that's something to think about too. There's a reality, but there's also money is a figure that matters too.
Yeah, 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 for sure. I'm wondering if if you know of any legislature, like for the states that aren't currently eco-friendly, or how this is spreading, this idea.
Well, there's several different forms of disposition. That's what we say in the industry. Like we have burial and we have the aqua dissolution, which is the water cremation. And it was just so interesting that when you and I were speaking in New Jersey that day, the law got signed for natural organic reduction to be something legal in New Jersey. And I think that blows people away. It's also legal in New York, also in California. So these major places say, yes, we can do that. So those things are there, they're out there. Not everybody is doing it at every funeral parlor, but you can ask around and there are choices. There's lots going on. You can find cemeteries that are allowing you not to be embalmed or in a metal casket or have a grave liner. It's just realizing, okay, this is where I live. This is probably where I'm going to die. What can I do that maybe might be, I don't know, alternative? If you want to do something alternative, what can I do maybe that's more green? And check it out. The interwebs has everything on there.
Very true. Very true. And so what's in your wheelhouse right now? Like, I know you have the book, and you did a TEDx, right?
Yeah.
Remind me what your TEDx. I know I mentioned at the
It
top,
was
but
going out green and ultimately about how your body is your last big green effort, because literally going green in the earth is the most environmental volunteerism you can do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you definitely intrigued me. I think it's because I've been through both my parents' deaths, and as you said, like they're expensive. They're really, and you do feel like you're kind of servicing an industry when you go through the burial process because there's so many people that are in the death business in that way. So it would be really interesting. I don't know that I would bury myself here in Atwater Village, but you never know. Todd, my husband, might bury me alive. No, thank you, folks. So you have the book and you do a lot of speaking, is that right?
Yeah, I really love to educate people. And if it's either on a stage or if it's at somebody's potluck or it's at a library, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I can bring a shroud and I show people how to shroud, and people have questions. And I meet such fascinating people who have such an interest in this. And, that happens a lot, which is great. My project I'm working on at the moment, I've written a children's book, and it's a picture book on burying grandma in the backyard. It's a very sweet, tender book about a girl who would go to grandma's house and garden. Then grandma died, and she was worried about this scary celebration. It was this lovely, lovely get together. And, that's been a very interesting book. Two publishing agents have shipped it around, and no one's interested. And so that's one of these like things where I'm still cracking at it. I've rewritten it a couple times, and that's just one of those. I've published 3 books, and this is one that's just not quite there. And I don't know if it's just too much. I don't know what, but anyways, yeah, I'm still working at it to get the education out there to children, and talk
Yeah.
about burying grandma in the backyard.
I think people, it's controversial because there's differing opinions on afterlife. So, and
Yeah,
if
right,
you
right.
introduce the idea of burial, then you have to have the next conversation. I think that's part of it. Plus, it's just macabre and people don't like it. I noticed a big difference when I'm speaking and I say, well, my mother's dead, and as opposed to, well, my mother passed. People like,
Yeah, and I find that too a lot of times when there's a gentleness that's definitely necessary, and people will say things like, "I just want to be kicked into a hole in the yard," and we say, "No, no, no. We place people gently into the embrace of the earth." And a lot of times when I'm speaking, I will start it off with saying, "This is going to be a very reverent conversation. There is nothing sarcastic. Even the slides, I don't have slides that are shocking because nobody needs that." I'm not here to be a funeral disruptor or to shock anybody. I've got a hearse that sits outside the funeral home, and I'm not wearing my red lipstick and being crazy driving through the streets. Again, it's really hard to lose people, and death. Sometimes the door just shuts and people have no interest. And there's been times I've been volunteering for my daughter for different things at school. And they'll say, "Oh, yeah, yeah, we know all about you. You're that person that works at the funeral home." And that's the end of the conversation. I think, oh gosh, I'm so much more. I have sheep, and I like to cook, and I listen to podcasts. And so there's just but it's just like that. Ugh. So I do understand that, and I'm sensitive to it, definitely.
yeah, I think that's what drew me to you, that whole idea, because we also are no sarcasm, no put down humor. We're always about like sensitive humor, like laughing with, not laughing at. And I can feel that that's your kind of lens for what you do. And yet you stay public, and I'm sure you have Instagram things and all of that to stay connected to a greater audience, but it doesn't have to be mean spirited and edgy and so
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I really appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Thank
So
you.
I'm open to questions. Anyone, if you have any questions, but I'd love to know, Elizabeth, I'd love for you to tell us how we can reach out to you, what your socials are, what, the best way to reach you.
Yes. Absolutely. So what I tell people a lot of times is if this has sparked any interest of anything, you can always call me at my funeral parlor. Even if you don't live in Oregon, you now have a friend who's a mortician and you can ask any questions. So I'm the only funeral home in Boring, Oregon. So I'll just put that there. That's easy to find me. I'm on Instagram at Elizabeth Green Reaper. I was christened as the Green Reaper for burying people in their yards. I originally thought, oh God, I don't know, that sounds sort of weird. But people said, no, 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 that's actually it's a compliment, it's good. And so yeah, I don't throw it around too much, but it's there. And then I've got some green burial groups on Facebook, what have you. But yes, I think that I just encourage people to get on YouTube and look around. And if somebody's personality isn't quite working for you when they talk about death and dying, find somebody else because there's plenty of us out there who are in the green sphere talking about eco burial.
And yeah, and is it at the Green Reaper or just at Green Reaper
Oh,
to
so
to
the
reach
the
you?
Instagram
You're in.
is oh, it's at Elizabeth Green Reaper.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yes.
there it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, it just
Yeah.
came up. Fantastic. Great, great. And as is common as we've discussed, right? There's not a lot of questions. People don't
Oh,
have a lot of
fine.
questions right now, and probably they'll reach you directly because
That's
that's,
perfect.
yeah,
Perfect.
it's a private experience. So,
Yeah, people email
um,
random things sometimes in the middle of the night when they're thinking of them. I answer the questions, no problem.
I just really love your soulful take on this, and I'm
Cool.
so glad that you made the time to be with us today because it's something in the senior space that obviously people don't talk about you don't want to be talking about it all the time, but the fact that there's options and you've presented them so graciously, I think is really, really cool. So, and thank you everyone who tuned in and anyone who's listening on YouTube. And we are, as I said at the top, we're Laughter on Call. All your laughter needs, we've got your laughter needs and your death needs now, just in this one episode. So we are all about connection in this life and the next. So please reach out, Danny at laughteroncall.com, Elizabeth Fournier. You can find her at thegreenreaper.org.